25 granite boxes, 100 tons each, buried underground in tunnels so narrow 2 people can barely pass each other sideways. The walls inside are so perfectly flat that a precision gauge used in aerospace manufacturing cannot find a single deviation. We can match that finish today with computer-controlled machines. They did it 4,000 years ago, with copper tools. In India, a 6-ton iron pillar has stood through 1,600 monsoon seasons and has almost no rust. We studied it for 91 years before we understood why. We still cannot reproduce it. In Iraq, a 2,000-year-old clay jar, when filled with grape juice, generates electricity. None of this is theory. These objects exist. You can walk up and touch them, and none of them should. Today, 7 of them. Egypt, Saqqara, 1850. Auguste Mariette is clearing sand near the pyramid of Djoser when he finds a stone sphinx half buried in the ground. Then another. Then a whole avenue of them, leading to a sealed entrance cut into the bedrock itself. They used dynamite to break through. What was inside has never been fully explained. Carved into solid limestone, running for hundreds of meters in complete darkness, are tunnels so narrow 2 people can barely walk side by side. And lining both walls, set into individual niches, are 25 enormous boxes made from black and rose-pink granite. Each one is 4 meters long. Each one weighs close to 100 tons, roughly the same as a fully loaded freight train car, placed inside a space where there is less than 40 centimeters of clearance on either side. Think about what that actually means. To slide one of these boxes into its niche, you would need to control a 100-ton slab of stone through a gap the width of your forearm, on each side. No room for ropes, no room for levers, no room for a work crew to stand and push, and the tunnel floor shows no scratch marks from dragging. Whatever method was used left no evidence it was ever there. When the first box was opened, it was empty. Smooth walls, nothing else. Mariette opened more. Same result, 25 times. Official Egyptology calls this the Serapeum and says these boxes held the mummified bodies of sacred Apis bulls, animals worshipped as living gods in ancient Egypt. It is a reasonable explanation. There is just one problem with it. Not one of the 25 opened boxes contained any physical evidence of a bull. No bones, no mummification residue, no ceremonial objects, nothing. So here is the question. Mainstream archaeology still has not answered. If these boxes were graves, what exactly is buried in them? Now here is where it gets stranger. Christopher Dunn spent 49 years as a precision manufacturing engineer, the kind of work that involves tolerances measured in fractions of a hair's width. He visited the Serapeum and measured the interior walls using an industrial straight edge accurate to 2/10,000ths of an inch. The surfaces matched it perfectly. Corners at exactly 90 degrees, an internal radius at each edge of just 4 millimeters. This is the geometry you achieve with computer-controlled grinding equipment, not with the copper and stone tools that existed in ancient Egypt. When Dunn asked a US precision manufacturing firm whether they could cut a box like this from a single block of granite, they told him directly, "It is not possible from one piece. It would have to be assembled from 6 separate slabs." Every box in the Serapeum was cut from a single monolith, quarried in Aswan, 500 miles away, and brought here through tunnels it barely fits inside. One box sits unfinished in the middle of a corridor, just abandoned, mid-cut, as if the workers put down their tools one afternoon and simply never came back. And the hieroglyphs scratched onto the outside of the boxes look like graffiti, rough, rushed marks that have nothing in common with the mirror-polished surfaces inside, as though 2 entirely different groups of people touched these boxes. One group made them. Another group, thousands of years later, scrawled their names on the outside. the way tourists carve initials into something ancient they don't fully understand. We might have more in common with those later visitors than we'd like to admit. In 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers sheltering from a storm near the island of Antikythera sent a diver down to check the seabed. He surfaced in a panic, shouting about dead bodies on the bottom. The captain went down himself. Not bodies, marble statues. The wreck of a Roman cargo ship, sunk around 70 BC, perfectly preserved under 60 meters of water. Among the statues and scattered coins, they pulled up a lump of corroded bronze about the size of a shoebox. Nobody paid much attention to it. It sat in a storage crate at a museum in Athens for 2 years, until someone noticed a crack in the surface. Inside the crack was a gear, perfectly cut, 2,000 years old. X-ray tomography eventually revealed 37 bronze gears hidden inside, the largest carrying 223 teeth, cut to a precision that cannot be achieved by hand. This device calculated the positions of the sun, the moon, and 5 planets simultaneously. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses. It even accounted for the fact that the moon moves faster at certain points in its orbit, solving this using an internal differential gear, the exact same mechanical principle that allows your car's wheels to spin at different speeds when you turn a corner. Engraved on the back panel, an instruction manual. On the front, color-coded display balls, red for Mars, gold for the sun. European science would not reach this level of accuracy for another 1,500 years. And here is the detail that changes everything. The Roman writer Cicero, writing in the 1st century BC, described a similar device built by Archimedes, which means the Antikythera Mechanism was not a miracle. It was the last survivor of an entire tradition, and every other example is gone. In the courtyard of a mosque in Delhi stands an iron pillar that has been outdoors for 1,600 years, 6 tons, 7 meters tall. Through monsoon rains, summer heat, humidity that destroys modern infrastructure within years. The Eiffel Tower, built from the finest industrial steel of its era, has to be repainted every 7 years to stop it from rusting. This pillar has almost none. In the 10th century, a cannonball struck it directly. The pillar survived. There is still a small dent, 4 meters up from the base. British chemists took their first samples in 1912. They found nothing that explained the corrosion resistance and moved on. The mystery sat untouched for 91 years. In 2003, Professor R. Balasubramanian of the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, published the answer. After running X-ray diffraction, electrochemical testing, and electron microscopy on the surface, the iron contains approximately 1% phosphorus with almost no sulfur or manganese. That specific composition, achieved through forge welding, heating, and hammering the iron repeatedly to lock the phosphorus in without burning it off, triggers the formation of a crystalline layer of iron hydrogen phosphate across the entire surface, less than 1/20th of a millimeter thick, invisible to the naked eye. That layer is self-healing. Every time rain hits the pillar and then dries, the layer seals itself again. The ancient blacksmiths created a natural analog to stainless steel 15 centuries before stainless steel was invented. No instruments, no chemistry textbooks, no written formula of any kind. Modern metallurgy has still not fully reproduced the exact combination of composition and durability. 6 tons of iron, no paint, just standing there, winning. In the British Museum, behind bulletproof glass, sits a Roman cup made in the 4th century AD. Shine a light in front of it. The glass is jade green. Move the light behind it, it turns blood red. Same cup, same glass. Two completely different colors depending on where the light comes from. This is the Lycurgus Cup, the only fully intact piece of dichroic glass surviving from the ancient world. The carved scene on its surface shows King Lycurgus tangled in grapevines, being watched by the god Dionysus as he dies. But the color shifting has nothing to do with the carving. It is inside the glass itself. In the 1990s, researchers examined fragments of similar Roman glass under an electron microscope and found particles of a gold-silver alloy suspended throughout, each one approximately 50 nanometers wide. That is 1,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. When light strikes these particles, the metal electrons oscillate and shift the wavelength of the light passing through. Silver creates the green, gold creates the red. This effect is called plasmon resonance, and today it is used in medical sensors capable of detecting cancer markers and water contamination at the molecular level. In 2014, researchers at Cambridge finally reproduced a similar optical effect in a laboratory using arrays of 16 million nanoparticles per square millimeter. The Romans achieved the same results 16 centuries earlier, grinding gold and silver down to invisible particles and suspending them in molten glass, without microscopes, without any concept of nanotechnology. The formula died with the empire. This cup is the only proof it ever existed. In 1936, workers laying a railway line near Baghdad broke into an ancient tomb from the Parthian period, somewhere between 250 BC and 224 AD. Among the burial objects was a clay jar, 14 centimeters tall. Inside it sat a copper cylinder. Suspended inside the cylinder, touching nothing, hung an iron rod. The mouth of the jar was sealed with asphalt. Wilhelm König, director of the Iraq Museum at the time, recognized the configuration immediately. Two metals with different electrochemical potentials, separated by a space designed to hold liquid. This was the structural blueprint of a galvanic cell. A battery. American researcher Willard Gray built an exact replica and filled it with grape juice. The device produced an electric current of approximately 1 volt. Connect several jars in series and you get enough current for electroplating, depositing a thin layer of metal onto another surface. Archaeologists found similar vessels at a nearby Seleucid-era site with bronze and iron needles sitting alongside them. And the Roman physician Scribonius Largus, writing in 50 AD, described treating joint pain by pressing a live electric ray fish against the patient's foot. The therapeutic use of electric current existed in the ancient world. They simply had no word for what they were doing. The Baghdad Battery predates Volta's invention by at least 1600 years. In 2003, it was stolen from the Iraq Museum during the invasion. Its current location is unknown. We cannot run a single modern test on it. We cannot confirm anything. The most important evidence is simply gone, and no one is looking for it. In 1936, the same year the Baghdad Battery was discovered, archaeologist Walter Emery opened a First Dynasty tomb at Saqqara, belonging to an official named Sabu. Lying next to the skeleton was a broken stone disc, 61 centimeters across, 3 curved lobes radiating from a raised central hub. It is made from metasiltstone, a fine-grained rock so brittle it flakes and fractures from a single careless tap. And yet someone carved it, from this material, into a shape with thin curved edges and a precise central axis. Not a single chip, not a crack in the carving itself. Viewed from above, It is indistinguishable from the impeller of an industrial centrifugal pump. The tomb is 5,000 years old. The most advanced tools available at the time were made from stone and soft copper. When a modern maker printed a replica on a 3D printer and mounted it on an axle inside a housing, it immediately began pumping water, functioning exactly like a centrifugal impeller. Engineers at Airbus printed their own copies and confirmed the aerodynamic properties were real and intentional. Egyptologist Cyril Aldred noted that the shape suggests it is a copy of a much older metal original, meaning the disc itself may be a replica of technology that predates recorded history entirely. 5,000 years ago, someone understood centrifugal force well enough to engineer a device that uses it. Then the knowledge disappeared. No follow-up, no similar objects, no explanation left behind. Only this one broken disc, sitting in a tomb, waiting for someone to figure out what it actually is. In 1974, farmers digging a well near Xi'an, China, hit a fragment of clay. Excavations revealed over 8,000 life-size terracotta warriors, each face individually unique, sculpted by combining 8 base molds in different ways across the entire army. Less than 1% of the complex has been excavated, but the warriors were not the discovery that stopped scientists. The weapons were. Researchers pulled more than 40,000 bronze swords, arrowheads, spears, and crossbow mechanisms from the burial pits. After 2,200 years underground, the sword blades still gleamed. The edges were still sharp enough to cut. For 40 years, the accepted explanation was chromium plating, traces of chrome found on the bronze surface, a technique not patented in Europe until the 20th century. The implication was staggering. Then in 2019, a joint study by University College London and the Museum of the Terracotta Army dismantled the theory completely. The chromium was contamination, absorbed from the lacquer coating on the wooden handles and bamboo shafts. It had nothing to do with the bronze itself. The real answer was simpler and, in its own way, more impressive. Researchers buried replica bronze pieces in the local soil, a fine-grained alkaline loess with almost no organic content. After 4 months of extreme testing, the replicas showed zero corrosion. The same pieces buried in English soil were heavily corroded in the same period. The Qin craftsmen selected a bronze alloy and a burial environment that worked together as a perfect natural preservative. They did not know the chemistry. They just knew it worked. 40,000 blades, 2,000 years of darkness, still sharp. We stood in the tunnels of Saqqara in front of boxes no modern machine can replicate. We pulled a 2,000-year-old computer from the bottom of the sea. We stood next to iron that has been beating rust for 16 centuries. We held a Roman cup built on nanotechnology we only named last century. We found a battery that predates the concept of electricity by 2 millennia. We looked at a stone disc that pumps water, carved from material that should have shattered at the first touch. And we walked among an army whose weapons were still sharp after 2,000 years underground. Every single one of these objects is real, documented, sitting in a museum you can visit this year. You do not need to take any of this on faith. You just need to buy a ticket. None of them require aliens. None of them require conspiracy. But every one of them requires admitting something we rarely say out loud. Our ancestors solved problems we cannot solve today. They developed processes we have not reproduced. They understood things, specific, practical, engineerable things. And then that understanding vanished. Not stolen, not destroyed, just lost, the way all knowledge is lost when the people carrying it are no longer there to pass it on. We call it rediscovering. They called it knowing. The mystery is not how they did it. The mystery is that we live in the most technologically advanced moment in human history. And we are still catching up to people who worked with copper tools and clay jars. What does that say about what we might be losing right now, today, without even noticing? Write your answer in the comments and subscribe, because the next video goes somewhere the textbooks refuse to follow.